Thank you. Haddies, hello, how are you? This is fun. Hi, I'm Dan Neal. I work for the Wall Street Journal. I'm their automotive critic, if you can believe there is such a job as that. And where I advocate for better mobility, which includes the adoption and promotion of electrification, which has occasionally made me something of a lonely voice at the Wall Street Journal. And so I was invited here to talk about my recent article that was called "You've Made Up Your Mind About EVs. Now Let Me Change It." Well, this is a long story, and I can confirm that it's a long story because I just saw Mary Nichols, formerly of the California Air Resources Board, and she confirmed for me that I wasn't crazy, that it did happen. That 20 years ago in California, we had this problem pretty much sorted. And we are still having the same incredibly, the same misunderstandings in the market directed toward consumers, which is inhibiting the adoption of electrification. Now, previous to this venue, I was probably famous for being in a movie called "Who Killed the Electric Car?" And in that movie, I used a vulgarity which became famous. I said the theory was that the oil and gas industries and manufacturers were in a grand cabal and conspiracy to defeat and hold back electric cars. I thought that was naive. Everybody had vested interests. It was just fair play and so forth. And I said General Motors would sell you a car that ran on pig shit if it could make money on it. And but I see now that I was naive because as I read my mail, and I get a lot of it on this subject, I'm confronted with the same bad information over and over again. And the same bad ideas which have predicated this conversation since the beginning. And they make me want to pull my hair out. The range thing, for example. For reasons cultural, political, and economic, consumers and the marketers of EVs have focused on this idea of range when it's, in reality, very much divorced from the practical day-to-day duty cycle that people would use. And this extends to the notion of charging. People say, well, we don't have charging. Most charging is done at home. You can say that over and over again. I myself have an electric vehicle that has 150 miles range on a good day, and we have never stressed about charging because we plug it in at home. Now, the fact that something like 80% of new car buyers are so situated doesn't seem to sink into this dialogue much, and it has created certain distortions that I'm sure you're all aware of. This need and necessity to build cars with big batteries to overcome the early generation of batteries' range limitations. Well, we all know that there's a certain incongruity to building cars with very big batteries if charging itself were more readily available and convenient, as it certainly will be in the next 5 years. So, but you see, that's a lot of putting an email to a reader, it's like, okay. And I've had it over and over again. Hybrids and plug-in hybrids. Oh my God, can I not explain this again? My God, I can't tell you how many times I've explained it. And we still are on the horns. I see headlines every day. Oh, consumers confused about a hybrid. Well, here's what I'm not confused about. 20 years ago, Toyota had this solution solved. It should have shared that technology with the greater world by making its patents on hybrid synergy drive and related technologies more freely available, making the world a better place by many gigatons. They didn't do that, and so what should have been the baseline in automotive gas propulsion, all gas engines should have been at least mild hybrids. That is to say, they should have had either in the beginning belt-driven alternators with small batteries or larger batteries that could sustain longer distances and higher loads. That was on the table years ago, and it did not, unfortunately for Toyota, I think in its master plan didn't really work out. It kind of inhibited that technology when it could have been more widely promulgated and more profitable, I think, probably in the long run. But so now we're having the same conversation about hybrids and plug-ins, and we're seeing also the same cul-de-sac regarding hydrogen. I get a lot of, people say, well, what about hydrogen? Well, we all understand that hydrogen cars are battery-powered cars with compressed gas batteries, and but again, the hydrogen has somehow fallen on the other side of the cultural divide. Partly, I think, and again, referring back to my former naivete, I do think this is a message being driven by, let's just call them vested interests, the oil and gas industry. Again, fair play. The other thing I hear about is that this is apropos of your interests. I think that China is going to swamp the U.S. market, and they are playing by their own rules, and basically finding these a complicated subject. I was around for Solyndra, and I saw that conversation twisted and distorted insanely until it was not a conversation about the merits of solar power or distributed energy, or it was about the folly of government backing new technologies. Well, it left us with our pants down, and the Chinese sold solar panels for a third the cost under the tariffs that were implied, and there went Solyndra. And it became another, nail in this coffin of perception that people have about EVs generally, or I should say green and progressive technologies. I get a lot of this in my mailbox. If you don't get a lot of this, it's, you got to understand, it's a general public newspaper. And this is what the general public is still struggling to come to terms with. And so things like, Tesla. One thing is for sure, that everybody's got an opinion on Elon Musk and Tesla. I have taken a more, I have a more muted approach. I don't know what's going on with that cat, but I really don't. But I know the car company is well managed, and they have stepped forward and have created, generational achievements in electrification vehicle technology. But all things must pass, and Tesla, if they're the incumbent in any sense, will be overtaken by other companies in due course. I think the panic that I hear in some of these email messages, sometimes I feel like I'm having to convince capitalists that capitalism works. And the free market also represents a principled and effective way to get things done. And, so I am a big, fat, lefty liberal who winds up promoting, these free market economics, because I believe that our system is better, it's more competitive. In the long run, we're going to do just fine. And, for example, the minerals thing, I know this is a big issue, but it seems to me, and I think in many people's view, that China is over-positioned on minerals in Africa and other places, and the technology is moving so fast, as you all know. I just spent some time with the battery engineers talking about making batteries with none of the exotic stuff, and all of it very low cost: dirt, iron, sand. It's all, and that is where we're going. Which brings me to another frustration. I thought this thing would start running. It seems like I've been talking a long time. Already, doesn't it? But I have a lot of frustration, so I'm glad to get them out. The conversation is people's, I guess you would call them their prediction values, are captive to their past experience. And I've been getting reports from people that were dated in 2017 or 2018. Their information is so badly out of date. And this is in the infancy of this technology, and yet they're convinced that it will never change. Never change. The idea of scaling the battery industry, that's the other thing. Bayes' theorem. If I had one thing I could send as a footnote to everybody who sends me these kinds of letters, I feel like you and your experience is not predictive of the world and the market as a whole. And we should teach ourselves to tread more lightly on assumptions based on our own experience and our own numbers, because I get letters from people who insist, well, they think that everybody in Texas drives a F-350 pickup truck, and, if they don't, there's something wrong with them. And so it's like, no, not all of them. And so these are the sorts of things. When people talk about the prospects of EV adoption, they judge this through their own experience. They don't see charging stations, so they don't believe they exist. And they won't believe they exist probably until we see hundreds of thousands of them on interstates and other roads, and access becomes a non-issue. Again, the chemistry issue, the battery chemistry issue is changing so fast that it's washing out. The technology is washing out this issue altogether. So that brings me to another frustration that came up when I was speaking to Mary Nichols, who's a lovely woman and a hero. I once wrote a screenplay that starred her, believe it or not. It was, I know, but she suggested, who's she, Scarlett Johansson? She had an idea for who she wanted to be cast as. But this is a woman, a public servant, who took the biggest car company in the world, brought it to its knees with a handful of merry civil servants like her, just a few technicians. And it was not easy, and it was not fun. And I think that the screenplay was about Dieselgate. She's the hero, and she certainly deserves all the credit for defending the California waiver all this time. So speaking of, we now have automakers, the bigs, the industry lobbyists, Manufacturers Association, and others saying car companies need more time to adopt to electrification. Now I really want to jump out a window, because more time, they've had 20 years, and they have spouted nothing but disinformation and baloney. No, I'm sorry, malarkey. That's what it says. That's the word. And they don't deserve more time. They were never operating in good faith. They took Mary Nichols and the EPA in California to the brink in 2015, and with regulations that, by the way, would have gotten us, we would be many, many megatons ahead now. And they were low cost. Oh, and they'd done the cost analysis. It would have been cheaper, dig this, it would have been cheaper for manufacturers to follow their recommendations than to carry on in the lazy, horizontally organized way they were. Anyway, they pulled the plug on that, and those rules, that whole rule book, was tabled, and now they want more time. Well, in one respect, I feel that now the economics of EVs at a consumer level are so dispositive that this conversation becomes increasingly irrelevant. If you're my sister's 7 years old. She had an accident in her Kia. Sorry, Steve, it was a Kia. And she needed to get a new car. She went to a Tesla dealership. She bought a Model 3 Highland. It is a spaceship. It is in every way, in a lot of ways that, frankly, only automotive people would, vibe on. It's an amazing automobile, and it was $35,000. And the price difference all along is going to keep coming down. This is the year when affordability becomes not so much of a problem. It's going to be a rocky landing. Agreed. There's going to be we will see cheap Chinese sourced automobiles coming into the country, but we do also have a robust rules about where those batteries, which cars can get the tax credit. In any event, in 5 years, when the dust settles, I think that electric mobility will be perhaps half the cost of current electric mobility solutions for middle-class Americans. And so, I put all that in my email and, kind of hope for the best, hit send, and, I'm pretty sure I'm on somebody's conspiracy. I wasn't a conspiracy theorist until very lately, by the way. I come to it as an adult, because again, I don't want to attribute bad motives to these people. There's a lot of forces in the way media consumes and distributes information about this vital technology going forward, and there's the selectivity bias. There's the negativity bias. There's the rhetorical question. EVs never worked. Toyota, game over. A new IC engine. And in addition to that, you have automakers doing one thing. When I say doing, I mean investing in one way, and then while continuing to talk about how they need to lengthen the twilight of internal combustion cars and products. Consumers are really don't know which to turn. They hear the masters of Toyota say, we're going to back off. There's a declining demand, blah blah blah. But when you look at the numbers, you see no. Electric vehicle sales are up strongly. They are the rate of decline, the rate of increase has varied. But this is like people looking out of the doors on a warm day in fall and declaring that winter's never going to come. This is just a very, very, it becomes an increasingly futile effort to forestall the inevitable. Toyota says in this market and in their home country where they have a lot of stick in the ground, they have a lot of social obligations, they have a lot of taxes to pay, a lot of people to employ, they can't move as fast as other car makers, and that is why they're not moving as fast. It is not having to do with the technology, and that's the part that's troubling to me, because these companies' fortunes and their strategic interests are being commingled in the minds of consumers with the viability of electrification overall. So it's a pretty messy situation. Meanwhile, Toyota's investing something like, they have a lot to invest. They have many billions to invest, but they've spent $100 billion, I think, for EV development so far. And Mary Nichols reminded me that in the late 90s, one of the reasons the zero emissions mandate was created in California originally, and one of the proponents of it were the small band of EV engineers at Toyota who were afraid without which their progress in this technology would be shut down. And sure enough, it was. And so now we are back in many ways, in many insufferable ways for me, back at square one. I just drove a pickup truck, let's see. It is, let me get this straight. Pickup trucks got long names. Okay, so this is a Ford F-250 4x4, 160-inch wheelbase with a 7.3 liter, that's a 445-inch, naturally aspirated, 2-valve V8. An engine my father would have immediately recognized and put in his hot rod. Why? Well, it's kind of a mixed story, because for one reason, turbo diesels are being regulated out of existence. But Ford has found some room in its compliance to build this engine, which is like a diesel-like 7.3-liter gas engine. It gets about 12, 14 miles a gallon. So, and I'm driving this thing around, I'm thinking that we've made, it's not true in some way, a lot of ways, I guess, but it feels like we've made no progress. It feels like I've gone around the block and it's taken 20 years. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to being declared right one day. It's going to be awesome. But that doesn't really happen. That exchange almost never happens in my reader mail. It continues to be a lot of the same old objections. For example, I've got a long list of frustrations. I had no idea. Thanks for being there for me, by the way, and hearing me out. The phobia of the new. If critics have anything add to the conversation is the defense of the new. The Cybertruck is new, and the Cybertruck is made of an unbelievable material, a stainless steel that apparently Elon and his buds got up, worked up from their SpaceX materials science division. Anyway, it's incredibly hard. But when people saw it, they were like, "Oh, it's so dangerous. What about pedestrians?" And I'm like, "Okay. Now, have you looked at a regular pickup truck, just your garden variety pickup truck that stands this tall at the grill and could wipe out God knows how many people in a crosswalk?" And that's okay, because culturally and for other reasons, that doesn't bother them, even though people in the industry know that hundreds more cyclists and pedestrians have die every year on account of these distortedly large, high, square, hard-cornered pickup trucks and SUVs, and the number of them on the road. Obviously, that's a big part of it. And but the Cybertruck looks dangerous to them. Okay, fine. If that's if that bothers you, that's fine. I know it's ugly. It's that's another story. That's a conversation for another email. And the other thing, I love to make the conservative case for electrification, but I also like to make the hot rodders case for electrification. I grew up in eastern North Carolina. I didn't know nut but cars for a while, and so I like to go fast. I like fast cars. I guilty as charged. And the most compelling performance experiences I've had lately have all been electric cars. Not just the fact that they are fast in a straight line. They handle better because their center of gravity is so low. Now that sounds like a sort of obvious thing to say, but until you feel a car with 1,000 horsepower with that kind of weight in the keel, and you rip around a corner with your eyeballs hanging out, it's different. It's different. It's a kind of a thrilling experience. I think Elon's thought was that he would appeal to the vanity and thrill-seeking of rich people with super fast cars, and that urge would eventually fund mass market mobility. But the fact is that mass market buyers also like performance, and all the more reason to support and encourage people to try electric cars, because most gas-powered cars today that are built to be compliant in the U.S. and Europe and China, they're strangled. Even though we haven't made that much progress, this just goes to the cul-de-sac they're running toward. But even with the most advanced technology, these engines can't have, these powertrains can't have the dynamism, the efficiency, the responsiveness, the power of an electric car. There's a company called Rimac, based in Croatia. It makes a motor that's about 800 horsepower, and it's about that big. 800 horsepower, an internal combustion 800 horsepower is like, forget it. It's like huge, and you couldn't get it. 6 people couldn't pick it up. And so you have this incredible compactness and power density, and you now have a lot of different ways to drive it. My last message to people, the world that never wrote to me, is that we can make power, electricity, in a lot of ways. And there's only one way to make gasoline, and it's dirty. And we have this technology is key to a lot of problems that are bother these people in terms of their overall security. For example, the filling up with gas, being able to charge, being able to run their house. They're worried about will solar farms make my lights go dark at night. So I have to continue to remind people that these problems are largely solved, and that not to be afraid of and not to believe too much of the misgivings. And and also to bear in mind how close it all is. Again, going back to the future and past, I think most of us, keep up with the headlines in this technology, and we see there are a lot of impending thresholds. The threshold when the nominal cost to build an electric car is the same or lower than to build an IC-powered car. Depending on where you are in the world, we've probably already, many companies have already passed that threshold. People don't see the chargers, they don't see the batteries, they don't see the range, they don't see the prices that they want. Everything they see as electrics are inadequate for their needs and too expensive. Or a third case, there are some ideological objections among my readers who don't think the industry has, the government has any business funding or promoting this new technology, a la Solyndra. I remind them the oil and gas industry is the most funded, subsidized industry on Earth. And then they don't write back. Anyway, for those reasons, that and all that and going fast, I've come out in favor of electrification, and it's been fun. So I want to thank everyone for coming back from lunch. That was a wonderful introduction. I almost got, and it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. Cheers.